guys, how's it going?
Howdy.
Good.
Welcome back to the Fighting Anti-Intellectualism podcast. I was told we should call it the Fighting Anti-Intellectualism live stream podcast because then it'd be the fail podcast. I don't know if we should do that because my fiance even created the thing for it right here.
I think it's perfect.
Oh, we'll go with it. So for those of you who do not know, today the Supreme Court of the United States of America had voted to overturn Roe versus Wade. And I have a video on that right here. I don't know. This is from Inside Edition. You guys ready to watch it?
I got my popcorn ready.
All right.
Anti-abortion rights activists rejoiced outside the Supreme Court as the 50-year-old precedent guaranteeing the constitutional right to an abortion has been overturned. The court ruled to overturn its landmark Roe v. Wade decision of 1973. 5 conservative justices agreed to overturn a lower court's ruling that blocked Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban, which was filed by the state's last remaining abortion clinic. The 3 liberal justices dissented, while Justice John Roberts, in a concurring opinion, said Roe and Casey should remain untouched. The Roe decision protected a woman's constitutional right to abortion before a fetus was viable outside the womb. The new decision also overturned the 1992 decision of Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which said that states can't enact restrictions that would pose an undue burden on people trying to access abortion before a fetus is viable. In the majority opinion, Justice Samuel Alito said that Roe was wrong from the start and has had damaging consequences. The ruling now sends the decision on where abortions can be performed back to individual states. Tens of millions of women in the United States will be affected, as more conservative states have been signing limits or bans into law. President Biden has said that the responsibility is on elected officials to pass legislation protecting the right to an abortion.
You know that the pendulum was eventually probably going to go back to the right, maybe. Because I don't know if Biden was going to win another election, but now it's definitely going to go Democrat.
I don't know. I mean, like, not that I'm saying that the economy is really at all his fault.
No, it's not all his fault.
And they're still going to think like, oh, well, you know, it was so much better before Biden got in.
But people do have issues with how Biden's kind of ran things a little bit and some things going on where there's been some movement away from the Democrats, just like there has been for the Republicans. But now with the Roe versus being overturned, I can see the Republicans losing a lot of seats because of this decision.
Well, one can only hope. Although it is encouraging to hear that people are leaving both parties at the same time.
What's that?
I say it is encouraging to hear that people are leaving both parties at the same time.
Yeah. It's always like, oh, the woke left, we're leaving the woke left, or we're leaving the Proud Boys. And so it's just like, it's always like, it's kind of like when someone says, I'm sure you've heard this before, kids nowadays, they don't have any respect. They don't even say yes, sir, or no, sir, or yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am, or thank you, or please. I'm sure you guys have heard that before, right?
Well, yeah, but I think everybody's heard that before in that...
yeah, it's...
You know, write something about that, about, like, the youth of his day?
Yeah, like, because in the 1957 film 12 Angry Men, the guy was saying the same thing about his son back in the late 50s. So it's been said. In the same way, people have been moving back and forth between the parties continuously over the years because there's always something going on.
Yeah, but in the video you say, I'm sure both of you heard that some dude said Roe versus Wade would have damaging effects and it was wrong in the first place. So what is damaging about women having abortions?
I don't know. I don't know where the damaging aspect would come in. When he said that, kind of rolled my eyes because it sounds like there's a case to be made about it being wrong, but that's not the argument you want to go with. Because I don't know, that sounds more like a religious or ethical standpoint, and that's just completely subjective.
Okay, so I mean, I personally believe that at least up to a certain point, women should have the right to an abortion. And before starting the live video, you told me that you have your doubts and you don't exactly support abortion and whatnot. So I think the deeper debate is the ethics of abortion and whether abortion is morally justified or not. So,
well, how do you prove that when, well, some people say that, and I've heard atheists even say this, where some people will say that morals and ethics are subjective, but some people say they're objective. I don't think anyone can even agree on the objective or subjective nature of ethics and morals, making kind of like, is it really worth arguing about moral and ethics?
Yeah, of course it is, right? So morals and ethics are subjective, of course. I mean, your core beliefs are subjective. Like the basis for your morality can be suffering is wrong and maximizing bodily autonomy is good. And these are your subjective choices. These are totally subjective. There's no law in the universe stating that uh, you should believe in these things. But the way we judge a moral theory or the way we judge a moral system is whether it's consistent or not. For example, I have a I have a moral philosophy that suffering is bad. All right, that's completely fine. But then I kill animals for fun. I kill animals for food that I don't need to eat, for luxury stuff. So now, so if I believe that suffering is bad, but it is okay to kill animals for fun, then my moral system is objectively wrong. Why? Because there's a logical contradiction in there, right? So I think, so even though morality is ultimately subjective, we can judge whether there is an internal contradiction over there, you know so I think that's how we judge moral systems. So d- I do we basically agree on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes
I mean,
sense.
I could argue that morality is objective, but then uh, that would take a lot of time, proving objective more. I mean, we could try arguing that morality is there is objective morality, but then that would take a lot of time, and then because proving that morality is objective is very difficult, and
It's not easy.
often,
We don't really have the time to really go into how objective it is either.
yeah. So I think the best thing to do is just to assume that it is subjective, and the
Okay.
only way we can judge a moral system is that whether there's an internal contradiction there. Because if there's a contradiction in your moral system, then we can argue that it is objectively wrong because there's a logical contradiction there. I mean, that's what wrong literally means. There's a logical contradiction. I mean, that's the most objective version of wrong you can have. So if you believe that suffering is bad, but torturing babies is good, then there is a logical contradiction in your moral system. So we can just reject it.
Okay. So
But
how do you want
but
to
the
begin?
consequences, of course, then you can have competing moral systems, and both of them are uh, and both of them are consistent. So that's the consequence. But that's the best we can do with subjective morality.
Okay.
So do we all? I'm guessing all three of you agree that suffering is bad and maximizing bodily autonomy is generally good.
Suffering generally, yes, I would say bad. I'm sure I can find a instance where it would be justified, but bodily
That's why
autonomy,
generally.
yeah, I would say yeah. I think maximizing general bodily autonomy is probably paramount.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I mean, for the most part, yes, but in instances of individual good versus like social good, I think the social wins out. So things
Yeah.
like
So
things like the pandemic and getting vaccines and whatnot, that shouldn't be a my body my choice kind of a thing, because it's not just your body your choice, it's the entire society in which you live.
that's what maximizing means, right? I mean, if you're maximizing one person's well-being and then at the cost of other people, then you're not maximizing. That's why I said generally maximizing it is good. So I mean, you could find exceptions, and what you said is would not count as maximizing, because like if one person chooses to not wear a mask and then infects like 200 people, then you're not maximizing autonomy. You're overall you're increasing suffering and minimizing autonomy of the people who got sick, right? So
Though
I
the argument
think
there could also be that in that situation, the person not getting the vaccine or not wearing the mask even is simply exerting their own bodily autonomy, and the argument against it is a hypothetical until it actually happens.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, he's maximizing his own autonomy at the cost of autonomy of like 200 other people. So, I mean, the overall, the net effect is increased suffering and less, less autonomy, because the other 200 people now have to stay in a hospital bed and they can't move.
That's assuming that that's going to be the extreme and that amount of people is going to actually get it. Not wearing your mask does not guarantee that 200 people are going to get.
We're not talking about COVID. We're talking about a hypothetical respiratory virus, right?
Yeah.
That can. So, yeah, I mean, that's like a general outline. Like I'm sure you can find exceptions, and I'm sure you can find a scenario where suffering would be justified or maximizing bodily autonomy would not be a good thing. But if you want to like lay out a moral system with all the nuances, I mean, then it will take all day. So I'm just giving you a rough moral system that is generally preferable and we could agree on, right? I mean, would you say like on most cases, or I mean, there might be exception, but generally speaking, like in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, suffering would be a bad thing and maximizing autonomy would be a good thing. Like
99%, yes.
yeah, so we basically agree. So hello Matthew. So provided that we Matthew, we just agreed that suffering is generally bad and maximizing bodily autonomy is generally good. So I'm guessing you would agree with that as well, right?
Although I will add also to the suffering being bad, no kink shaming.
Yeah. So Autumn, provided that we basically agree on like a rough moral system, where exactly do you think is the problem with abortion? Like, I mean, as far as I know, you have.
Abortion or Roe versus Wade?
Well, let's start with abortion. Roe versus Wade is ultimately about abortion, right? So.
It is, but like because it's a little bit more complicated. Like you can support abortion but be against Roe or vice versa. I'm sure. Like I'm sure it's not so cut and dry.
Yeah. But the thing is that if we start talking about Roe versus Wade, I'm pretty sure that the conversation would eventually lead back to talking about whether abortion should be morally justified.
True. So I guess it would make sense to just go straight into the nitty gritty. I don't really have an issue much anymore since we last spoke about it together privately about abortion. When it comes to sentience and something's being alive and is conscious, and that's like a whole different story. I think it also depends on was someone raped, were they abused, what was the situation that led up to the situation that they're in, and also I guess I think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that you have a 2-week-old fetus, or let's say 1-month-old fetus, and if it was the case that a 1-month-old fetus does not have any form of personhood, like there is no consciousness, there is no memory, whatever. So, do you think that the question of aborting the said fetus is a question of bodily autonomy purely? Because, like, if you're talking about a fetus who is 8 months old, then it's not just a question about your bodily autonomy, because there is another person living inside you. Because an uh, eight uh, 8-month-old fetus has the physical uh, architecture needed to generate consciousness, but let's say a 1-month-old fetus, and let's assume hypothetically that there is no consciousness, there is no memory, there is no personhood, whatever, right? It's just like a collection of cells uh, without any consciousness or sentience or memory, etc. So would you agree that in that case, aborting that fetus is a matter of purely bodily autonomy, and if you don't allow someone to abort that fetus, you're violating their bodily autonomy?
Mm, um, I don't know. My first thought of it is, what, like, is it really about bodily autonomy when the thing in there, if it's not alive yet, will it be like? There is also the fact that I'm also thinking in my head, like, what about the fact that it also is like it's still forming, it's still evolving, it's still structurally there and not stagnating? Is it really just about bodily autonomy at that point? I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, so you're saying that uh, that a fetus, in absence, like despite in this hypothetical scenario, would still have moral worth, uh, or deserves moral consideration over the woman's bodily autonomy because of the fact that
Well,
it is
it's more of
animated and
maybe more of a what it could be, because but then that's not really a justification though.
okay, so I think you brought up two arguments, that it is like animated and it is evolving, for a lack of a better word, and second that second is the potentiality argument, that it has potential to become a human, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if these are the two things that give something moral considerations, then I think I can pull off a reductive ad absurdum. Like I can stretch the argument to its logical consequence, and the logical consequence would seem absurd. For example, let's deal with the evolving part, right?
Okay.
So uh, a benign tumor is also evolving. It's slowly growing. It's not going to kill you, but it's going to grow very slowly inside your body. It came from your own cells. It's a human life, and it's evolving slowly. So, so do you think a benign tumor deserves some form of moral consideration, provided that it has one of the features that you value, that is being uh, human life and being dynamic and animated and evolving constantly?
Say that one more time.
Right. So you said you value two things in a fetus, which is even if it has zero consciousness, zero memory, zero personhood, etc. That is number one. It is constantly evolving. It is animated. It's changing. And number two, it has potentiality. That is, it has the potential to become a, a human person. It has the potential to become an adult human with feelings, etc. So my question is, a benign tumor has one of those features. A benign tumor is constantly growing, it is evolving, and it is a human life technically, because it came from your own cells. So, do you think a benign tumor deserves some moral consideration?
Yes.
Really?
Well, uh, So if you argue that a benign tumor deserves some moral consideration, then because it has one of the features which you value, then that is consistent, right? So your moral system is consistent, right? I mean, a fetus with zero consciousness deserves moral consideration, and so does a benign tumor. But most people, so we agreed that we can have competing moral systems that are equally consistent. But most people would argue that a benign tumor does not deserve moral consideration, and they would just love to have it removed from their body, right? So most people would disagree. So most people would not have a consistent worldview if they believe that aborting an unconscious fetus or a pre-conscious fetus is wrong, but it is fine to remove a benign tumor. So
I'm not sure that that's an inconsistency.
yeah,
Because with the fetus, unlike with the benign tumor, there is at least the potentiality of a future awareness.
well, yeah, I'm not saying fetus is the same as a benign tumor. I'm saying that if you believe that the two things that give that allow, if you believe that the reason why a fetus deserves moral consideration is because it has two features, namely uh, the ability to evolve over time and also the potentiality, then a benign tumor deserves some moral consideration, not as much as a fetus, but it deserves some moral consideration because it has one of those features, right? So maybe it's not as important as a fetus, but it is kind of important. It is 50% as important as a fetus, wouldn't you say? Because it has one of those features at least.
I don't know. I mean, as far as evolving, or really, it's more developing over time. I mean that's applicable to pretty much everything. I mean, the Grand Canyon developed over time.
No.
It,
Well, because the counter to that would be like a fetus is a human life. So I mean, a benign tumor is also a human life. So I think that's why I use that as an example. So you cannot like, so if you use the Grand Canyon as an example, then people might say that okay, a Grand Canyon is not a human life. It
I'm
also has to
not
be a
sure that just
human.
because it consists of human cells, it makes it a human life.
Well, I mean, scientifically speaking, it is because like human life is if you define human life in terms of genetics, then yeah, benign tumor is technically a human life. You know, it literally came from your own cells. So I mean, it is almost as much as human life as a fetus. You know, so
Or perhaps we're just ignoring the fact that maybe human life is a social construct.
he may. Well, we can go down that route, but let me quickly address the evolve potentiality part, right? So when it comes to potentiality, right? I mean, the potential to uh, develop into a full adult human being. The easy counter is what about sperm? You know, like sperm also has potentiality to become a human, right? So I mean, if what you value is potentiality, then sperm also has the potentiality, and sperm also evolves, right? I mean, it's you don't just have a like full grown sperm cells. It starts from like there's an entire process called meiosis where a sperm develops and then it can swim, it's animated and it has the potentiality to become a human life, right? So you also then if potentiality is what you value, then masturbation should be illegal because you're killing sperm cells, you know
Well, not quite, because it's not the sperm doesn't have the potential to be a human life. It has the potential to have the potential of being a human life,
which is so
which
again
is a
it
little bit more
deserves some.
indirect. It's like a
Yeah,
whole
so
extra thing is separation there. Like it's that much further away from Kevin Bacon.
yeah, so I mean it is further away from the fetus when it comes to potentiality, but it's in the same lane, like it's not outside the field. For example, you're not going to argue that a brick has the potential. Okay, let's forget the brick. Like it has some potentiality, maybe not as much as much of a potentiality as a fetus, but it has some potential to become a human life, right? You argued that it has the potential to have the potential, so it's just like further down the line. So if you argue that a fetus deserves like 100% moral consideration, like it's very difficult to argue that a sperm deserves zero consideration. It has to deserve at least some moral consideration because you know it it has the potential to have the potential, right?
Eh.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more that I could go on with that, but I think that's that would just get into the weeds.
What? Can I ask why?
Okay,
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
let me give you a kind of analogy, right? So imagine the chairman of a company gets like, okay, imagine you run a school and the principal gets like $500 a month, you know, and so if a so a vice principal should, if a principal gets like $500 a month, a vice principal cannot be getting $0 a month. Like he should earn some money at least, right? Because if a I mean, a vice principal is just down the line compared to a principal, right? So if a principal is earning some money, then if the principal is earning $500, then the vice principal should be earning at least some money, maybe less than the principal. So it's same as that, right? I mean, uh, if a fetus deserves like 100% moral consideration because of its potentiality, then you cannot say that a sperm deserves zero moral consideration because a sperm also has some potentiality. It has the potential to have the potential, so that is also one kind of potentiality. So it cannot be zero. Wouldn't you agree?
We have
I
a comment here that says, "How long do you think it will take Planned Parenthood to send planes to states like Texas to pick up girls at public schools without their parents' knowledge, but with the full cooperation of the schools?"
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
in a perfect world, it'll start happening today.
Yeah. Okay, and another way to address this issue is the following, right? I mean, we have a problem with killing fetuses, and I brought this up earlier, like during our group chats. So, but yet we don't have a problem killing cows and adult animals because an adult cow is far more sentient and it is far more conscious than a human fetus could possibly be. So I mean, we, I mean, the reason why most people have a problem with abortion is like they wonder that whether it's okay to kill a human life or whether a fetus is a person or not. But we don't have a problem with killing cows for and nobody needs to eat beef to survive. Beef is bad for you. Like red meat gives you colon cancer, but yet we don't have a problem with killing cows, even though an adult cow is far more cognizant than a human fetus could possibly be. So, I mean, that is another uh, absurd aspect that one could bring up. What would you say about that, David or Autumn, whoever?
Well, as far as being okay with killing cows or chickens or whatnot is in order to survive and whatnot. I mean, I've made the argument before that I kind of think that our definition of what counts as life is insufficient, or at least sentient life. I mean,
Yeah.
just because we can't communicate with a thing does not mean that it is not in itself aware. So we don't
Yeah.
really know that, say, trees aren't aware. In fact, studies have been done that that they'll release chemicals into like the air so that other local plants know to watch out because something's going on. Um, so I mean, it's kind of one of those unavoidable things. Plus, from the perspective of the state, which obviously doesn't really have a whole big issue with killing people anyway, since there's always a certain allowance of like collateral damage whenever they make a military strike or something. The real thing that makes the difference, I'm sure, from their perspective, is that unlike that unborn child, that cow or that foreign person who happens to be a collateral damage, they have zero potential of ever being a taxpayer.
Okay, so I mean that's good, right? So you raised 2 points there, like it's unavoidable, like killing sentient beings is unavoidable, and number two, uh, the real difference is that whether someone can become a potential taxpayer or not, right? So uh, I mean, here's how I would address the two. Like, I mean, yeah, there are some fringe scientists who believe that uh, trees are conscious, and uh, I don't really agree with them, but I'm not going to lay out the entire argument. But even if trees are conscious, like they're not nearly as sentient as a cow, right? So even if it is ultimately immoral to eat a plant, it would be more moral than eating a cow, because even if there is consciousness in plants, it is far less than compared to a cow, because they don't have like a well developed central nervous system. So uh, even if it is impossible to avoid killing sentient beings, we should go for beings that are less sentient, that appear to be less cognizant, instead of going for something like an adult cow or an adult goat. And the point about being a taxpayer, then I could argue that there are people with severe cognitive abnormalities, and they have the same intelligence level as like a cow or a dog. I mean, they have zero potential of ever becoming uh, a potential taxpayer, and they're actually a burden to society, right? I mean, you have to take care of them. A cow can take care of itself, but a disabled person with cognitive abnormalities, like, other people have to take care of them, and they cannot pay tax. So I mean, if that's the moral system that the state follows, then according to that moral system, people with severe cognitive uh, disabilities, we should be allowed to kill them off, provided that they have no one left to mourn for them. So would you agree that according to that moral system, it's okay to kill people with severe cognitive abnormalities, for provided that there is no one left to mourn for them?
Well, no, but I do find it
Well, because
interesting that you'll qualify things as being more or less sentient, which kind of leads one to maybe surmise that you think that it's quantifiable. It's like what is one atom of sentient?
well, we have measures of consciousness, like it's called a PCI. It's called that actually reliably differentiate between locked-in syndrome and comatose patients. So we can uh, it is possible to uh, like quantify consciousness that way. Like we actually have objective measures of determining how conscious a person is. Like when you're like when you have uh, when you take too much alcohol, right? I mean, you're like half asleep. You're not going to be as sentient while heavily intoxicated with alcohol as you're right now. I mean, you're definitely more sentient right now than when you were during an alcohol intoxication, because you were half asleep, right? So I mean, there are levels of sentience. I think that's more or less obvious. But why would you say no? Because you argued that what gives the reason why the government is supposed to value life is because whether they can become a taxpayer or not. But a person with severe cognitive abnormality is not never going to become a taxpayer, and he's going to depend on other people to take care of him. So by the moral standards of the government, why can't you just kill those people?
Oh well, I mean that's not my personal moral code. I just kind of think that's the perspective that the government,
Yeah, yeah.
by and
I
large,
mean,
should probably take as far as like setting laws and whatnot.
yeah.
Although I would think that I mean, there is something particularly different about human beings as opposed to anything else, not to sound, you know, speciest. So
Yeah,
that
but
even if, like, say, a cow and a human being were to have the same level of sentience, I think that it would still be, at least by the vast majority of people, considered to be more morally acceptable to kill the sentient cow than it is to kill the sentient human being.
Hmm.
Because I think that our society just particularly values human beings above all else, which might be right, might be wrong. I don't know. Jury's out.
yeah, but then wouldn't you say that? I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, the government advocates for this. I mean, you're describing the moral system of the government. I mean, you made that clear. I mean, these are not your personal views. You're just describing what the government believes. But that's another issue. Like, you're saying, like, we decide what's valuable, uh, or what deserves moral consideration is whether it is human or not, right? So, but the problem with that is, like, imagine we discover an alien species, right? Uh, they look just like humans, but I mean, they almost look like humans, and they're as sentient as humans. Like, they're intelligent, they have language. So under that view, it would be morally acceptable to drop a nuclear bomb on them, just because of the fact that they're not Homo sapiens.
You ever seen Battlestar Galactica?
Uh, no, but I'm assuming it's about space travel and stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like, their big bad guy there is the Cylons, and apparently one of the Cylons' big tricks. Now, granted, I'm speaking not from direct knowledge, so apologies if I get any of this wrong and anybody's a big Battlestar Galactica fan. But my understanding is they have the Cylons, and they are able to disguise themselves as human beings, like, perfectly. Like, can't even tell the difference, really. And yeah, even though they can look like human beings and like, everything like that, yeah, they would still absolutely nuke the hell out of them if given the chance.
So you're saying humans would nuke the hell out of those other species?
Oh, yes, 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 I do.
Hmm.
Again, I'm not saying that it's right, but I'm saying it's what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, most people would agree that it would be wrong to nuke those uh, alien species. Like, if they, I mean, if they realize that they're just as sentient, like, I think at the end of the day, the thing that we value is sentience, and the reason why we don't have a problem with killing cows and goats is because they don't have language. They're unable to communicate their suffering to us. So and so we are able to, like, divorce ourselves from the suffering that we cause animals. So, like, I think that's the reason why uh, we are able to, you know, kill cows and stuff. And I think the reason why people have a problem with killing fetuses is because, uh, after some time, a fetus starts looking like a baby. It's just a tiny version of a baby, but it does not even have a fully formed neocortex. So, I mean, so we attribute life to that, uh, or we attribute consciousness, or we attribute moral worth to that fetus. So I think, like, uh, like, in these arguments, like, emotions, like, they take precedence over logic. But I think, logically speaking, like, having a completely consistent uh, moral system that is also, like, pro-life, I think it would be very difficult. I mean, you could point out holes in that. For example, like, some of the things that I pointed out, like, whether to value a benign tumor or not, or whether to value sperms, or, like, whether you should go vegan or not. Like, I mean, even if you don't agree with these arguments, like, I mean, uh, I think at least you'll agree that there's a conversation to be had. Like if you're really pro-life, like you should consider that you should at least have a proper discussion whether it is also whether you should also be pro-life about other animals, whether you should be pro-life about a benign tumor or a sperm cell. You know.
I hear you.
Yeah. So, are you pro-life or pro-choice?
Oh, I'd actually register myself as pro-abortion. I think more people should get them.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see the people walking around on the streets these days? Yeah, we could use less of that. Um, but no, I'm very most definitely pro-choice, and I don't. Frankly, I don't even think that it matters one way or the other whether you think that the fetus is a human life or not.
I mean, it is human life. I don't think it's a person, you know. I mean,
Well, right,
scientifically
but
speaking, it's human life. Like if you define human lives in terms of genetics, right? Uh, I think I draw a distinction between a human life and a person, you know.
well, yeah. Although I also think that an innate part of humanity is the capacity of reason and recall and all that kind of thing. So even if it's
A
made up of
fetus, none
human
of it.
cells, even if it has the genetic makeup of human, I don't think that counts as human
Yeah,
unless it also possesses those traits.
yeah. So,
But again,
I
I
mean,
don't think that the abortion issue should really focus on whether it's a life or not, because no matter who you are, you're not going to get convinced one way or the other if you're already firmly in one camp. You know, like
oh,
it doesn't
you,
matter how much science you bring; it's always going to be something that people react to on the gut, and so it's not really an effective argument to make pro or anti-abortion.
well, yeah. I mean, but I'm pretty sure you would agree that if your expected date of delivery is tomorrow, right? Then you cannot have an abortion today, right? You would agree with that, right?
Except under
Because
extraordinarily rare circumstance.
yeah, I mean that never happens, you know, like that never ever happens. You know, nobody gets an abortion like the day before their expected date of delivery, but I'm just presenting you with an extreme hypothetical. Like if your delivery was tomorrow, like you have a fully formed baby inside you, there's you're not going to have you cannot have an abortion today, right? I mean,
Well,
uh,
no, but at that point they could just extract the baby and basically
yeah,
birth it then. I mean, it basically if the
yeah,
bread
sure.
is
Like
baked, then
then the
it's okay
baby
to
can
take
just
it out of
live
the oven
outside.
and
Yeah.
have it be there.
Or let's think of this example, right? Imagine like a 6-month-old fetus was fully conscious. It was writing poetry inside the mother's womb, but you know it is incapable of surviving independently. Would you be pro-choice still then?
It really depends on the poetry.
Yeah,
But no, I mean that's actually human behavior though, and
yeah.
I mean like how in the hell they're actually writing poetry before they form language skills, that is beyond me. But
I mean that's
I
a
get that it's a
hypothetical. I
hypothetical.
mean that's never going to happen, right? But you never know. But you know, I mean that's not going to happen. But like if it did happen, like by some magical powers, a fetus somehow is writing poetry inside a mother's womb at 6 months, but it is incapable of surviving on its own. If you were to terminate the pregnancy, then would you be pro-choice or not?
It really depends upon the level of brain development.
Yeah, right.
I mean, at
So I
six
mean,
months, that's what, like 24 weeks,
n- uh,
roughly,
yeah,
give or take.
yeah, roughly. Yeah,
Yeah, so that kind of seems like I think at that stage the brain has actually already developed a lot of the functions that it's going to need, right? I mean,
yeah.
unfortunately, I'm not a biologist, so can't say for sure exactly when the brain is developed, but
W- Well, the parts of the brain that normally generate consciousness, that is like the thalamocortical system, like it starts to form at 6 months. You know, that's when it starts to develop.
Okay, then yeah, at that point, I'd think like it's a little too late to cut the pull or to, pull the cord there, unless the mother was in danger of losing her life as a result of birthing the child.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the relevant point for you is the developing of the brain, right? Or whether it has the capacity to generate consciousness and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because it varies what autumn anyways. Okay, so I have to ask you, like, why is the United States like going backwards? Like they're banning abortions, they're denying global warming and stuff. Like why the backwards movement? Aren't you supposed to be more progressive and move forwards
Yeah,
with
you'd think
time?
that, wouldn't you? And especially in a nation that claims to value Christianity so much, it sure seems to leave behind the poor and leave behind the sick, and not care about the babies once they actually have been born.
Yeah, I mean, once the baby is born, like send them to the military to get killed for a war they did not start. I mean,
Or as of late, apparently send him to school where he's going to get killed.
yeah.
Not to be hyperbolic, I know it's not that.
It's not hyperbolic. I mean, seriously, like your country believes that a person's right to own a gun trumps another person's personal safety. I
I really
mean,
hate that that's a word in our language, trumps. Like that.
yeah.
It seems like that word now needs to be changed. But oh well.
Autumn is wearing gloves.
Well, I mean, he changed his last name to Trump.
I gotta get going, so
Boo.
I have a place I have to go to soon, so that's why I'm dyeing my hair.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anytime anyone wants to talk about the actual case, I'll be up for it. I wasn't.
Okay, yeah, I was hoping we would get to it today, but forgot I had plans today.
All right.
Okay, did I seriously leave because of my clouds?
What?
I don't think it was your clouds.
Yeah.
Although
Are
I
you
will
sure? How do
say
you know that?
there have been 2 nights when I have woken
many
up
clouds.
because of cloud spam.
Wait, those are clouds. I thought those were cum shots.
Oh my
Like,
God.
why?
I think I'm gonna end the broadcast. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
For
Good
watching.
idea.
See you guys later.
Check you later.